Hello, I'm the Archivist. I archive it so you don't have to. Alright. This is a bit of a rant reaction video of some sort. Let me just get this out of my system. Now, I heard about this the other day. That the A and Y pony um who's has had subscribers unsubscribe to his channel because he commented on the demise of Princess Molestia on JJ's channel. All because they didn't agree with his viewpoints. I completely agree with ANY's viewpoints. The show itself, it tackles subject matter and just makes lighthearted fun of it. It is there simply to milk the franchise. Like, I don't know, Hollywood, the Evangelion series, you know. It's a concept that everyone does. When they find a cash cow, they milk it for all it's worth. And, they said, hey, this draws attention. We can be funny about it. We poke fun at our... They take an episode where they have fun mocking themselves. Where Molestia gets a phone call from her CM or whatever that is, and I'm still learning the lingo. But she gets a call and she gets a phone spoofed or whatever. She gets pranked. She gets a prank call from her CEO or whatever. And and it has a general story to it, from what I've read and watched and was told about. It seemed like they were just trying to just poke fun at this one-note joke character. Okay, let's back up a bit. Okay, what is Princess Molestia? Okay, Princess Molestia, if some of you don't know, is Princess Celestia's more darker natures that have taken hold, and she's basically run amok throughout her kingdom. Now, I can buy this to a certain extent of this concept because being immortal and being around for like 1,000 years without too many friends and possibly lesser, like, for lack of a better term, lovers, that is really, really going to start to get to a pony after a while. The isolation, the constantly putting up a front to look strong and regal in front of everybody almost every minute of every day. That's going to take its toll. So when the storyline for Princess Molestia came out, which was read to me by the hardcore kid, just shouts out to you, kid, you rock. I was very engrossed in the story until he stopped around chapter 7 or so, and I'm like, well, what happens next? What happens next? Where can I see this thing? And of course, I was still back in the beginning or the middle of my fandom, so I didn't know where to look until I came across people reading the stories, on YouTube, and not just in their own review page or whatever, channel, and I managed to hear the rest of the story, and I think this is a very good story because, one, the concept of Molestia is plausible. There has to be some darker nature, psycho something buried deep in Celestia. It has to be something there. You cannot go 1,000 years in that type of isolation without having something be buried there. Luna acted out sooner, apparently, and that's why she was banished to the moon. And so, basically, yeah, Celestia kind of goes off the deep end through various events, which I will not spoil for you, and she just goes on a sexual rampage and starts, raping and molesting a lot of the main characters in MLP. And the thing is, while I was listening to this, it was just like, yeah, this is kind of awful, but it's a delve into going through a traumatic event. They're going into something. These characters we like, we love. We see them go through hardships and friendships and all these other dynamics. But it's like, okay, here's a situation that's totally alien to the franchise, and people think this is the worst thing you could do to a character. No. There's another one. I'll get to that. That's worse. Let me finish this. Um, there is like a horror flick angle to this where she keeps stalking each character one by one, and they're trying to frantically figure out what to do, and they're trying to figure this out. It's them pulling together, and each one gets taken away one at a time, and eventually comes back. A little worse for wear, but still capable of let's fight the fight. Let's keep trying to solve this problem because this is a very big problem. Our leader is going on a rampage, and so the team comes to gets a plan, executes it, and then gets their friend back in the end. Because they couldn't just very well banish her to the sun. I mean, that's just like they did with the Luna/Nightmare Moon, because that's just a stock cap situation. And so they kind of have to solve the problem now. Can't just put it away for later. And so they solve the problem, and she apologizes, and everyone's there, and they kind of forgive her a bit quickly. It's the ending. They kind of wanted to wrap this up. It's like a 12-chapter, 20-30 minute little mini stories, or 20-minute long readings, and so they kind of forgive her a little bit fast for my taste. They should have had a bit more of like emotional scarring, just a bit, to show that their nerves are a little rattled. Like, this is a bit of an experience. It's going to take us a while to get over this, but we all want to get over this, that sort of thing. So it felt more like an episode ending where it's like, well, we forgive you for what happened, and so it kind of would have been nice if they just went on a little bit more, showing them like going to like group therapy or having a group therapy meeting or something at Twilight's or something, and discussing their feelings about the whole thing, and help healing the scars, each one holding the other. I think this whole experience, even as is, really shows to like bring the characters together. Like they're being brought together through this tragic turn of events. They're even closer together now than what they were, because now they have an issue to get through. And I think that shows a lot of character to, pull together and rely on each other after the aftermath also, that everyone's willing to help move on as a group from this horrific event. Now, that's my feelings on that. If you feel differently, all right, you feel differently. I can understand how you feel differently. But I like to see this horrific story in a positive light. Like those from how Digi Brony described to me Cupcakes. Pinkie Pie's, that dark fanfic about Pinkie Pie. When I first heard about it, it's like, yeah. Which is also read by the hardcore kid. Yeah, I didn't like it. But then after Digi Brony described it as an upswing story. You start at the bottom and then the story goes up from there. It's like, oh, okay. Now that makes sense. All right, so it's not quite as bad. It's from the bottom of the barrel looking up, and eventually is trying to get there, trying to become better, So it's like, oh, okay, it's a bit more acceptable now. I understand the story a bit more. Okay. It's a pretty smart, starting at the low point and then trying to go up from there. But it's just a little unfeasible to think that Sasha could be around for 1,000 years and not have a dark side. And I like the slightly lighter tone versions of this in such stories as If Her Majesty Wishes, in Faithful, where Celestia has a more of a domineering side to her personality, and she kind of like trains Twilight to becoming a stronger student and everything in magic, as well as like pretty much kind of more not as intense as the Princess Celestia storylines or that characteristics, but still a bit kind of forceful on Twilight sexually. So it was a bit of a hard thing to get through, but then you learn it's coming from such a a, a place in Celestia that is hurting so much pent up emotion, so much like negative emotion, just so much of it, and you see it's just spilling out wherever it can, and of course it channels through to Twilight because Twilight's her student, and etc. etc. And so we see a bit more of the emotional pain Celestia has been holding on these past 1,000 years of loneliness and everything else. So it's a bit more explained, so it's more heartfelt as the story goes on. You know, Twilight's learning to become the one of the stronger magic users, and we see that Twilight's heart is also slowly, ever so slowly, starting to melt Celestia's heart. That's as far as I got in the story to about chapter 4. So it's just you're just starting to see them like connect emotionally. So in the beginning, it's a lot like Princess Celestia when Twilight was brought on as her student. But I could definitely see the evolution of the characters. Their arcs are starting to take a very definite, likable course. I just wish there were more so I could see more of this, because I really like where they're going with that. And then there was If Her Majesty Wishes. Now, this was a very light one. This is a story about a newbie guard who goes to line up late, who sleeps in by accident and gets into lineup late, and then just as he gets like about to be yelled at by his commander, there's an order comes out from the princess saying that she wants to see him specifically. And he goes to her and she starts putting the moves on him and etc. etc. And now he has an unbelievable story to tell the rest of the troops during guy time with guy talk. So he's got bragging rights now, apparently. So it's a lot more lighter-ish, but it's very enjoyable fanfic or clopfic. Okay, next up is what I explained earlier that is really worse than the story about Princess Celestia, is a story called Mistress Do-Well. Okay. Basically, the setup for the story is that Rainbow Dash has become basically a very, very unlikable character. She's become arrogant and unreliable because of her ego again. She thinks she's all that, and she's very popular, and so she neglects Fluttershy's defeat her animals, and so the remaining main 5 decide, well, we really need to teach her a lesson. We really need drastic action if we're going to save this friendship, and Rarity spearheads this whole thing, saying the drastic action and everything, and what to do, what the plan was, and everyone gets behind it because we gotta save this friendship. And so Twilight, in the name of science again, decides to go along with it too. And so they kidnap Rainbow, stick her in a basement, and then proceed to do more or less S&M training on her. Psychological torture, physical torture, emotional torture. It's like every type of torture known to break her will, pretty much. And it's all spearheaded by Rarity. Apparently she had all the toys and gadgets and everything already in her basement. So apparently she's very experienced with this for some strange, bizarre reason. And there's some minor emotional connecting between Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy in the middle of all of it, and then Rarity comes in and just starts she is just brutal and mean about it. And Fluttershy is just trying to be gentle as her gentle nature is, but she makes it very clear, I will, if you don't straighten up, I am leaving this friendship. I'm going to be gone and move on to somebody else as a friend. And you would have lost. So Rainbow just tries to get into it, and then Rarity just is being brutal after that. But for me, the story really picks up in part two, or season two, or however you want to do it. The second part of the story, where after Twilight realizes this has gone too far, the physical mutilations, it's just that this has gone too far, and saves everyone. Part one and part two are written by two different people, so there's a slight different miscontinuity between the ending of one and the beginning of two. But he says, there's a thing, so just ignore that and blah blah blah, and he's a fan of part one. So Twilight basically Rainbow leaves to wander the world to try and get her pride back or something like that. I don't know. She becomes like Kung Fu the Legend or whatever, the wandering samurai or whatever. And Twilight is basically put under house arrest along with the other four. She tries to just move past everything that she's realized she's done. It's like, what have I done? I willingly participated in this. It's like, how the heck did I ever thought that was a bright idea? So she's been drinking and this and that, and everyone's trying to help her to realize you shouldn't, beat yourself up over it. And that's pretty much where the story leaves off as is. I rather like to have them being read. It feels nicer to me. But if push comes to shove, I will read them. So yeah, I think Mistress Duell is a far darker story than Princess Molestia. It's just a lot more intense story. Rarity's trying to break Rainbow Dash's spirit and will and everything, as opposed to Princess Molestia. She just wants to have physical play, but she shows some sort of compassion or some hint of kindness to some slight, tiny bit. It's how she does things that still shows that she has a gentle nature to her in her actions, ish. Like when she's in midair with Fluttershy, she doesn't just drop her or whatever after she's done. She uses her magic and gently lays her on top of a roof, So it's more in how she does things that really makes these stories different. If you feel I'm wrong, feel free to disagree with me in the comments. But those are my things. Anyway, back to A and Y's story and his plight. Oh, that poor guy. Yeah, his story I was telling you in the beginning. Yeah, that made me laugh my ass off at one point, where the one called Pinky or whatever that helped to get the Princess Molestia thing canceled. I laughed my ass off at the line where he says, "Well, you really had a victory, one victory in your otherwise meaningless life." Oh god, that was so funny. I typed back, to him, and I just said that he said, what my quote line to him, my text back was, "Why the buck would I ever leave you?" So you are just, you're funny and all that and stuff, and I was praising him, and it's like, people shouldn't unsubscribe because he has a certain viewpoint on a certain matter that's different than anyone else's. This is all supposed to be lighthearted fun. Stop taking it so seriously, people. Man, it's like, just kind of go with it a little bit, Yes, it's a sore subject matter, but it's the story itself that you're supposed to be listening to, What does the story tell you? What do you feel when you listen to it? When I listen to it, I feel the strength of survivors. A group of friends that go into something and come out the other end possibly as a group for the better. Because I realize they can rely on each other no matter what happens. No matter how horrific. They will always be there for each other. But if you feel you can't, agree with him on this one topic, then I guess that's your choice. Me? I've had disagreements with other people on YouTube before. I've had disagreements with people on television. The following? You kidding me? That is epic, stupid, moment upon moment. Everybody in that show, other than the lead character, is a moron. An entire army of cops, and they can't guard one woman. Everybody keeps making the wrong decisions. Oh, well, I'll do this. So I'll go out alone. It's like, haven't you seen, scary movies at all? Have you seen, I don't know, Death Wish? You ever heard of Gats? Or Gits, or whatever the hell his name was? Or Goats, or whatever? The guy on the subway that inspired the movie, anything? You're on a subway, of course you should bring a weapon with you. But everyone's all just not making the logical decisions, at all. And it is just so excruciating to watch. Because it is just a group of people that cannot come up with the bright idea, one, in the entire series. And Kevin Bacon's like the only competent person there. I honestly have no idea why he's the only one that makes proper headway. While everyone else is like stumbling around in the dark saying, I don't know. Gee, how did that happen? Well, gee, if you didn't give him internet access, this all could have been avoided. But apparently during civil liberties, of course you give him unsupervised access to the internet. The guard is standing right there, but he's not looking directly at the screen of what the guy's typing with or looking at. And it's like, you're standing in the same room as a mass murderer. I think it probably would be in your best interest to look at what he's typing on the screen. Excruciating. So, I have problems with certain TV shows that I scream at the television of its epic stupidity. And that's my viewpoint. Some people probably love it and probably think everybody's a genius on that show. Personally, I hate it. Except Kevin Bacon. I understand him. I'm behind him. He's good. Everybody else, I have no idea what the heck they're on. I don't want to have any of it. So yeah, I have my viewpoints. Other people have theirs. ANY has his. I guess when the day comes when I feel I am totally disgusted by a reviewer or feel I'm not in the proper viewpoint of someone in charge of a channel and I feel like unsubscribing, I guess maybe that day will come. I don't know. It hasn't happened to me yet. I guess that's all I have to say about that. Oh, except for one last thing before I sign off. Whatever you do under any circumstances, do not drink and review. It just might make you go on a rant. Until next time, kiddies. See y'all at the conventions.